Welcome to Elevate, the podcast where we dissect exceptional achievers who are consistently raising the bar personally and professionally to produce extraordinary results in investment real estate and ultimately in their lives. Now here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, welcome back. This is Tyler Chesser. I'm so thankful to have you here, and I'm so thankful to be here with Ravi Gupta. Ravi, how are you, my friend?
I'm excellent. Happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and I want to welcome Elevate Nation back because we are ready to take it to another level, that's for sure. And I want to welcome everyone back because our mission is to identify and apply how the best of the best raise the bar personally and professionally to achieve greatness in real estate and beyond. And again, this is a masterclass. This is for people who are looking to achieve uncommon results and purposeful outcomes through real estate investing and ultimately in their lives. And it's really a mastermind session because we've got a master with us today in Ravi Gupta. And if you appreciate what we're doing, we would appreciate if you subscribe to the show. Share this with a friend. I mean, there's one person out there that could really be exposed to this message and take their life to the next level and take it to an uncommon level for sure. We would also appreciate a rating and a review because it helps us reach our message to more people. And ultimately, our goal is to reach millions of people with this message because, you know what? Most people are just tolerating their life, man. They're plugging it in and they think it has to be this way, but you know what? It really doesn't. And so we're going to dive in here with Ravi, and I want to tell you a little bit about him before we do so. Ravi is the co-founder and managing member of Viking Capital Investments, LLC, Viking Capital. Prior to forming Viking Capital, LLC, Ravi was the founder and the CEO of MMG Capital, a real estate company with a multi-million-dollar portfolio in the greater Washington, D.C. area. His strengths include raising capital, investor relations, repositioning, conservation, and green energy. Ravi is the director of operations for Viking Capital with an expertise on value-add renovation, construction, and asset management. Ravi also directs Viking Capital's charitable arm. Ravi graduated with distinction from the University of Virginia with a major in biology and minor in chemistry. He also received his medical doctorate from the University of Virginia, and he completed residency and research fellowship training at UNC and Duke. He is a practicing physician in Northern Virginia. His interests include reading, travel, nutrition, charity, and spending time with his wife and kids. And, you know, Ravi and I met, I guess earlier this year and really found a liking together and really a lot of commonalities in terms of just curiosity, in terms of learning. I mean, you're talking about, what he loves to do is to read and to travel. And beyond that, obviously, we share a sort of a lot of commonalities in real estate. But we wanted to bring Ravi on. And Ravi, tell us a little bit more about you behind the bio. You know, we all have these bios and we love it. But I want to know more about you as a man.
Sure. Well, yeah, happy to be here, Tyler, and grateful to be on your show. So a little bit more about me. I was born and brought up in Massachusetts. Actually, moved around a lot as a kid, and then grew up in Northern Virginia, pretty much where I settled in. As I mentioned, or as you mentioned, married with 2 kids. I really enjoy family life. I love spending time with my kids. I coach my kids' soccer team, and spend a lot of time with them traveling and going various places. So that's a big passion in my life. The company in this real estate company that we developed, and as you mentioned earlier, you sort of alluded to, it's another way to create and to grow and contribute in your life. And that's what I found specifically as kind of another aspect of my life in that it created for when I formed Viking Capital. So, spent a lot of time giving back to charities, as you mentioned. We recently helped develop this school in India where we funded a partial build of this school. We gave back to our community here in Fairfax County, where we paid off some of the school lunches for kids that couldn't afford some even subsidized meals. So we've formed a partnership with the county, and every quarter we pay off a different school in our county. Those types of charities, spending time with family, trying to consistently educate myself and improve myself. That's really what I'm about.
Yeah, and I really love that because it does you have to shift away from internal focus at some point, right? It can't just be all about, well, my next goal and my next hurdle is to reach, this sort of assets under management or this type of cash flow or whatever. And I love how you've grown to a point where it's about creating, it's about growing and contributing. So tell me more about that. I mean, was that an intentional shift, or was that just a natural progression of how things have gone since you've grown the company, or what's that process look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, like when you're kind of growing and starting off in life, the focus automatically comes to yourself. I mean, you're trying to get by, you're trying to, make things happen for yourself. But then I feel like when you get to a certain point in life and you sort of reach this point of maybe you can call it stagnation, or maybe you call it kind of reaching a glass ceiling. You realize that there's something more out there. And, I've had this desire to sort of, give back for a long time in my life, but I really felt it develop and grow recently. This type of business that we're in, it's one that, is really helps us, very favorable to that type of lifestyle, because you are affecting a lot of people. I mean, even with, in real estate, you are dealing with tenants. You're dealing with tenants and their families, and you can give back to those people. You're managing the property managers. You also develop or generate this income, and you could kind of keep it all to yourself, or you could give back. So it's sort of been a part of me for a while, but I feel like it's really grown over the past several years.
I love that. So I want to talk, kind of about you as really, such a dynamic type of a person. I mean, obviously you're a practicing physician, and you're growing this type of an organization, to such a significant level, 250 million assets under management. And obviously with such a contributing sort of focus, was there a moment in your life, or was it, a couple events, maybe one specific event, or was it more of a process that got you to the point where you said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to live this uncommon life? Because you're living an uncommon life. I mean, when did that happen, and how did that work from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. And I feel like it was more of an organic type development for me. I mean, there's always a desire in me to grow and to do more in life, and I didn't know what that would lead to. And just studying medicine, yeah, and for those doctors out there, or those who've kind of taken this higher educational path, it's like you just delve into it. All your energy goes into it. It's and you really think that this is going to be it, and this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And that's the way it was for me for many years. I mean, I was practicing in a hospital system in Northern Virginia for 12 years. And then you get, you call it the 7-year itch. And I think, it's sort of cliche, but there's truth to it. Like in 7 years, I felt like, hey, look, is this all I'm going to do? And then, 12 years comes by and you're like, okay, there's more to life. During this time, actually, my wife and I started investing in these homes in DC, because we were thinking about initially just settling in DC, and our agent at the time asked us a question: why buy a condo? Why not just buy a small multifamily building, live in one unit, and rent the other two? So that was like our first foray into a value add proposition. And we didn't know the terminology, and we didn't know really what we we're doing, to be honest. But we bought a building a small building, a 3-unit building in DC, in DuPont. Lived in one unit, and in fact got paid to live in that unit, which was pretty amazing. And this happened at the bottom of 2009. So it was like a really tough time to get a loan at this time. So then we bought another 3-unit building, and another. So we ended up buying 4, and this was sort of like kind of like sort of an organic type, growth for us. We built money up, kind of spent it on another building. My wife really was a huge factor in this, because she was motivating me and like helping with this process. So we had those 4, and we were making enough that we both were practicing medicine part-time. She's a doc as well. And then, I was sort of like relatively content with practicing part-time, and it was, I could do, things with my free time as well. But Vikram Raya, my business partner, good friend, approached me and he said, "Hey, let's start this company." And I was like, not really knowing what I was getting myself into really. I was like, okay, let's, that sounds interesting. Let's do it. And that's where it all started. And it sort of grew from there. So right now I'm sort of retired from medicine. I shouldn't say retired. I stopped being employed in 2017. I'm not financially tied to practicing medicine. I practice because I have a passion for it. And I started going into the field of functional medicine, which is the medicine of health and well-being. So really focusing on maximizing your genetics, your genetic potential. So that's the type of medicine I'm starting to practice now. I still go into the hospital every now and then just because I enjoy it and I want to be there. And I spend a lot of my time with Viking Capital. So that's how I divide it up.
That's awesome. It's probably a conversation for another day on sort of like epigenetics and that sort of realm, because that's highly intriguing. And I think it's important for Elevate Nation to really be thinking about how are you optimizing your health for sure, because a lot of times people get so caught up in building wealth that they forget about their health. And so that's probably a conversation for another day. But I'd love to know. I mean, what you're talking about here is sort of like, it's like most people in real estate, you kind of stumble into it in some ways. It's like, well, my agent told me that, it'd probably be not a bad idea to do a little bit of a house hack. And you probably had no clue what a house hack was at that point in time, and just made some sense. And it was like, wait a minute, this cash flow is kind of intriguing. And so you continue to build that. And I think many can relate. And now you've got such a significant syndication business that's acquiring assets all over the United States and extremely active. So I'd love to know, fast forwarding to now, to today, in the syndication business and what you're doing with Viking Capital. What's an example of something that you've done to raise the bar recently in your business, and what's come of that result?
Sure. So I think probably one of the best things we've done is hire a good group of people to work with us. We've got two phenomenal employees. Griffin Martin's sort of our senior analyst, and Alicia Galloway is our sort of executive assistant. And with their help, we've really been able to grow and elevate ourselves. So I think it's important to have a group of people surround yourself with a group of people that are like-minded, that'll continue to help you grow, and your employees are part of that. So that really was a major shift for us, and that enabled us. That move really enabled us to grow the way we have, and we're continuing to grow. We're looking to hire more, but that's probably the biggest one, I would say.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can completely agree myself. Just bringing on a couple of staff members has been such a game changer for me. I mean, when you get started in real estate, of course, you're doing everything. You're trying to figure out every single piece of the business. But as you grow and as you scale, and that's one of the beautiful things about what you're doing is it's a scalable business. And so you've got to bring people on who are helping you with the processes and procedures and all the many different demanding sort of activities. So I love that. I'd love to know, obviously you're saying yes to opportunities, you're acquiring new deals, you're also bringing on new people, but what are you saying no to, and how are you, what sort of process or procedure do you go through personally to say, what, this isn't going to work for me personally or our business or our core values, or how do you say no?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's sometimes it's the hardest thing, to say no to somebody. So I think it really stems from sort of a number of things. You mentioned values. That plays a big role in how we run ourselves as a business. In fact, we spent a day sort of at a company retreat at the Salamander Resort, which is close to Northern Virginia, and we sat down and just spoke about our values and spoke about what we really stood for and believed in. And if anything doesn't fit in that value system we have, we don't do it. There've been some instances where we were something I can think of off the top of my head where Griffin saw something. He was like, "Hey, should we do this?" And then we sort of talked about our values and we're like, this doesn't align, we're not going to do it. And we decided not to do it. So that's one, one thing, one way we make decisions that way. Another way is when there's, as you grow and develop, there are people that want more from your time, want more time from you. And it's hard to say no to those people sometimes, but that's something that I've, been getting better and better at, to just telling people that, hey, look, I don't have time to meet this time, but I can, you can meet with, Alicia or Griffin, or, maybe we can schedule a call at some other time, so saying no to those types of requests have been a little more difficult, but something that I'm growing into. And then finally, another thing is just business development. As we're growing, we get more deals from brokers, and brokers are giving us these deals that make sense in some ways, but we have to say no to some of them because we're tackling others. So saying no to them is also something we've learned to do. We hope we're doing it well.
Yeah, I think the piece on sort of developing and being aware and clear on your values is one of those things that's like, that's an easier proposition to decline certain opportunities. But I think the more challenging thing, like you said, is how do you decline these sort of, hey, can we meet, or can we have a phone call? I mean, there's so many phone call requests or meeting requests that, you can't just take all of them. So is there any nuggets of wisdom that you've been able to uncover through your journey on this?
Yeah. It's, as you said, it's hard. One question I ask myself frequently is how can I add value to this person's life? That's like sort of a primary question that I ask myself, on a daily basis, and when I interact with somebody. So if and here's an example. There was, we were at a mastermind recently with Dave Lindahl, already mentor of that group.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were interacting with several people, and there was one person in particular who was really at a kind of a precipice in his life, and things were changing, and he wanted to, he hadn't started anything, but he wanted to grow. And he was like, hey, can I meet up with you? Can I meet up? And I was like, I thought in my mind, how can I add value to this person's life? And I was thinking, meeting up with him, having dinner or drinks or something, it's not really going to add value. It's more, and then I asked him to say, hey, what are you looking for? What do you want to accomplish? And sort of in that interaction that we had, was able to figure out a way that I could help him and he could help us in our business. So we sort of form this relationship where we've said, hey, look, if you do this type of work for us, you can be, potentially come on board. And that's how it helped. Like, you kind of look at that at that moment and see what you can do, what you can do to help that particular person. And that helps you avoid maybe some, other types of dinners, drinks, other types of things that maybe don't really necessarily need to happen.
Yeah, it's just taking the extra step of asking yourself, well, what can I do to add value to this person's life? And then identifying through an additional step of asking, hey, well, what are you looking to accomplish? What exactly are you looking out of this relationship? And I think it takes some courage, it takes some strategy, and it's like, you don't have to just run 100 miles an hour at all times. It's just ask those questions of yourself, of the other person. That's actually a really good takeaway. I'm taking some notes here on that one myself, because that's been a struggle. So tell me about some habits. What are some habits that you are, integral towards your success? And I know you're a very habitual person, so I'm curious to know what habits are very important for you.
Yeah. For me, which I'm sure this is true for many of your listeners, of your guests, is a morning routine. I mean, I think that's super, super important. What I do typically is I get up early. I try to work out regularly, probably 4 or 5 times a week. Meditate, focus on the day and what do I want to accomplish. And I have, in my area where I work out at home, I have a poster of my year goals that I look at on a consistent daily basis. So that really, that morning routine really helps me get going for the day. Also I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. I think you are as well.
Oh
I
yeah.
believe that we had this conversation. So I use RPM to plan out my day. It's this rapid planning method that Tony Robbins teaches, and I plan out my day, plan out my year. So really have everything laid out so that I know what I'm going to accomplish that particular day, that particular week, and that year. And it makes it easier to go about life knowing, having a clear idea what your goals are. As Tony Robbins says, clarity is power. So you have a clear idea, and then when you pull back, when you're having fun, with friends, with family, you can really pull back and know that you deserve kind of the fun that you're having.
Yeah, I love that. I think Elevate Nation's got to go back and replay that, because there's so many things you can apply immediately. I think number one, one thing that we see so frequently is, getting up early. Look, it's not required, but it's a pattern. Highly successful people are up early and they're treating themselves with, priority, where they work out, meditate, look at your goals. And I love the RPM method because, rapid planning method, and also the fact that it's about the result and what's the purpose for that result, and then your massive action plan. It's so huge. And if you can apply that to every single one of your goals, that's how you start to chunk things down, because what's the next action? What's the most, what's the highest priority when it comes to my goal? If you can chunk that down, rather than, obviously you want to think big, you want to think as big as you possibly can, but if you can break it down to this process, it's a total life changer. And that's how guys like Ravi are making it happen. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to know, beyond in your habits, what's an investment that's been a game changer for you? It doesn't have to be a real estate deal, of course, but what's been a really important investment for you over the past year or so?
Yeah, good question. I recently invested in this solar company that is based in Pakistan, and one of my investors, he's a fellow physician, works in the hospital where I work. His wife started this solar company, and she creates these microgrids in developing countries, and she focuses on Pakistan because she's Pakistani. She was born there. And she wants to expand to other areas. But I love her ultimate goal. It's like the problem in developing countries with energy is that it's very it's very unreliable. In some places, some villages, they don't have power. It takes a lot of infrastructure to build those power lines, and a lot of maintenance, which some of these countries can't afford. So she creates these microgrids for these people, and it makes huge impacts in their lives. One story that she told me, which was very eye-opening, was there's one particular farmer, and he charges his phone once a week, and he does that in a city which is about 3 or 4 hours drive away. And one day his son was playing with his phone at night, and then the farmer woke up and saw that his phone didn't have charge. So he goes, 4 hours so he stops working. Obviously, he has to go to the city for 4 hours, charges his phone, and sits there for like 6 hours while the phone charges. Comes back, has to pay for that trip back and forth to charging his phone, loses a day of productivity. And, and that's his life. That's what he does. And what she's doing is creating a microgrid, and it's an affordable grid where it's solar, green powered, where he could charge his phone right there at home. And it seems like such a basic thing to us, but it's a huge deal for these people, and it improves their productivity, improves their life. Having a light at night to study is a huge deal, and for these people, from these kids. So I invested in this company, and I want to continue to invest in them, and that's probably one of the kind of the coolest, most interesting investments I've made.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's
Yeah.
you forget how many people in the world, just don't have the standard of living that we just really take for granted on a daily basis. So I think it's another reminder that, success is our duty. Like you've got to elevate, to a level where you can give back and you can make an impact in these type of ways. I mean, there's so many other different opportunities, whether it's, investing in microgrids in Pakistan, or so many different things. So I love that. I'm curious to know what other what's maybe a small investment you've made in yourself that's really made a big difference for you.
I think probably personal coaching, I would say, is a investment I made in myself, and something that I was not really sure about initially. And I heard from Vikram, my business partner. He was like, "Hey, look, this is a good idea. You should try it out." So I tried it out with some coaches, and then things didn't really work out as I wanted. But then I realized, sort of, you get what you pay for. In essence, like,
Hmm.
you're paying like a couple $100 to this coach, thinking you're going to get so much out of it. I mean, you may, but chances are you probably won't, as much as some of these other coaches out there that will charge more. So, as an investment, I decided, hey, it's worth paying, this amount of money for this type of coach. And I've got a great one now, and he has really been helping me tremendously. His name is Trevor McGregor, and I know you know him quite well. And he's been helping tremendously. So that's an investment in myself that definitely paid off.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. Beyond that, I'd love to know, one thing is that, we always learn from success, of course, but we also learn from failure. So I'm curious to know, what type of failure has been something that's like been maybe it was even devastating at the time, but sets you up for later success. I don't know if there's been anything like that, or if there's maybe something less severe, but curious to know, what sort of wisdom you gained from that experience.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I was thinking about this. This question, and I think, or I was thinking about in the past, and there's probably two things I can think of. One, personal failure, was I was in a relationship when I was younger, thought it would lead to something greater, and then we ended up breaking up, and it sort of put me in a position where I had to kind of rethink about my life and rethink about who I was and what I was about. And I think, a lot of people, this probably story may resonate with a lot of people, but it really kind of grounds you, and, like, you have to really build yourself up from a fundamental level. And that is, that's one experience of failure that I think has become a success, because I figured out a lot of blind spots and things that I wasn't aware of. And, I really got into self-improvement, and I went to different, Landmark Forum is like this course that I went to, that really helped me, kind of see my blind spots, and open that possibility up to have a better life, and the Tony Robbins stuff we've been talking about. So that was one. And then, sort of like a business failure, was this was when my father and I were sort of flipping homes back in 2005, 2006, not really knowing what I was doing again, building off the organic market, not having a clear exit plan. Ended up buying this house, and the market dipped right when we purchased it. So bought it at the peak, and ended up literally just this year selling it for a loss. So, like, in general, big financial loss, but it was a huge educational failure. I mean, really, failure, you can call it a failure, you can call it a learning experience, but it was a huge learning experience. I mean, and that really helped frame how I practice as a multifamily syndicator. I mean, I know the importance of market cycles, of really focusing on a good exit, focusing on a good business plan. It sort of, like, encapsulates that whole bit of how I want to perform as an operator.
Yeah, it's almost like tuition. At times you
Yeah.
have to, you're going to take the blows to the chest, or to the chin, and it can be extremely stressful, and you can have so much remorse, or you can look at it and say, you know what, this is a learning experience. There's something here that I was supposed to learn, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to turn it into a success. I'm going to turn this lemon into lemonades. And that's certainly, it's not unusual. I mean, so many people have challenges, especially early in their real estate investing business. It's like, look, you're gonna make mistakes, just expect it. Don't let it, paralyze you. Because I see so many people, they read every book on the shelf about real estate investing, and they say, well, I'm ready to do it. I don't know what to do, but what if I make a mistake? And so I think it's great to see, the fact that you've been able to have so much success off of something that, a lot of people would say, man, it took you that long to get rid of that thing. It's like, wow, you're talking about what, 15 years later? And obviously, you shouldn't be ashamed of that at all. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, that's a good point you make. And sometimes you gotta throw your hat over the fence and figure out a way to get it. It's if you sit there and you have that analytical mindset and you're just immobile because you're not making a decision, that's harmful too. That's like harmful in the other way. So it's really, you got to find a good happy medium there. You have to be willing to take chances. You've got to be willing to be okay with uncertainty and variety in life. I mean, that's an important part of growing. If you don't have that uncertainty and maybe that discomfort, if you don't have that, then you're really not growing. So that's important to think about.
Well, I believe it was Tony Robbins who said this, but he says the level of success that you can expect to achieve in your life it equals the amount of uncertainty you're willing to accept in your life. And I think it was Tony Robbins, but that really stuck out to me because every single deal is uncertain. I mean, yeah, we can do our due diligence. We can underwrite this thing, all the way, from frontwards to backwards. And we can really kind of do our, our lease audit and all these different things. And we know everything about this deal, but still at the end of the day, I mean, what happens tomorrow is not what happened, yesterday, but you can't let that paralyze you. So be willing to take chances and embrace uncertainty, I think is a great reminder. So tell me, beyond that, beyond some failures, but what we want to kind of focus on is like where focus goes, energy flows, is success, right? Success also leaves clues. So I'm curious to know, who's one or two role models that inspire you, that you look up to?
Yeah, well, there's several. I think just in different facets of life, I have different role models. In sort of the multifamily syndication space, Joe Fairless is a big name, and I really respect what he does, and I look up to him. In business as well, Elon Musk is a role model for me. In medicine, Dr. Mark Hyman, he's sort of like the father of functional medicine.
Yeah.
So I look up to him. Kind of in self-growth, Tony Robbins, Oprah Winfrey is somebody else that I like a lot. And then sort of, like politically, I've got Barack Obama, Al Gore, Arnold Schwarzenegger as well. Those are some of the people that I find to be models for me.
That's cool. And what I see from that is like, you have role models in different areas of your life.
Right.
It's like, hey, practically, you're growing a syndication business and Joe inspires you in that way. And also, somebody that you can sort of model. And I love, thinking about like even going down the list. I mean, Elon obviously is thinking bigger than almost anybody on the planet. And also, talking about Dr. Mark Hyman, I'm familiar with him as well. And just thinking about your passion for functional medicine, but also for health and vitality. So it's a great reminder, or perhaps a distinction for Elevate Nation, is like, if you want to model things, pick models for different areas of your life, for your business, for your health, for your inspiration, for your personal development, your personal growth, politically, whatever it may be. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's and something that Trevor says, and that I'm sure that you're aware of, is like you think about having a round table, like the people, your role models, you imagine them sitting at a table, and when there's a difficult decision to make in your life, a difficult aspect in your life you're trying to get through, you think about asking each one of these people how they would respond in that particular situation, and it helps you clarify what you should do. So that's a great tool and technique as well.
It really is. Actually, if you've read the book Think and Grow Rich, which I talk about frequently, he talks about building your own imaginary board of advisors. And if you, before you go to bed at night, close your eyes and imagine your board of advisors. And I may be butchering the phrase of what he calls them, but it's essentially a board of advisors. It's like, all right, closing my eyes, I'm sitting here with Elon. I'm talking to, Tony Robbins, I've got Oprah over here. What does Oprah say about this decision? I mean, it's amazing how that process actually does transpire in your mind, because you think, like, a lot of people who haven't done this, like, man, this sounds ridiculous. Like, what are you talking about? But it is amazing because for somehow you actually get their wise perspective, and it's like, okay, now it makes sense. I actually, I got the advisory from my counsel,
Yeah.
and I highly recommend Elevate Nation to try this out. Build your own roundtable, build your own, board of advisors, board of directors in your life, in your business. It will certainly make a difference. So that's great. What's a goal that you're most proud of accomplishing over the past 12 months?
I went to the Date with Destiny event in West Palm Beach, and in that event, you list out your goals, and that's another Tony Robbins event. So, thinking about those goals and the ones that I'm most proud of, I really think the first is being a soccer coach to my kids. And that's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And I'm coaching both my sons and daughters' soccer team. They're 6 and 4 years old, and that's tons of fun, and I love it. I've reached my financial goals for the year, so super excited about that. The charitable goals that I've almost reached. In fact, actually, I think I just reached the last one recently. So I'm reaching those. And then another one that I'm proud about is starting a podcast of my own, like you are, Tyler. So I've got one called Doctors, Real Estate, and Money. My niche group of listeners are physicians who want to invest in real estate. And I've got several episodes out currently, and growing that as well.
I love it. What's a goal that you're most inspired and uncomfortably working towards now?
I would say that's a good question. Let me see. I thought about this. I would say something that I am most inspired by, I think, is sort of becoming a thought leader in the space of real estate. It's sort of uncomfortable in the sense that it's another area of growth that I really didn't anticipate, and I'm learning and grow. And this podcast, for example, and talking to investors, being in masterminds and things of that sort. That's something that I didn't anticipate happening, but I'm learning as I go, and that's something that I'm proud of. I'm proud of the direction I'm going, but it's also uncomfortable. But I think being uncomfortable is a good thing, because it's allowing me to grow in that direction.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think you can tell that the compass is in the right direction when you're starting to feel some discomfort, and something I always have to remind myself, and we always have to remind ourselves, because if you slip into complacency and comfort, then you're not going to become who you're ultimately meant to become. So I think that's really, really a great reminder. So Ravi, what's the driving force behind what you do? I know you're such a contributor. I mean, you're talking about setting charitable goals and obviously exceeding those on a continual basis, and then investing for impact that we've talked about. Coaching your kids' soccer teams. What's the overall driving force behind what you do?
Yeah, I really it brings me back to this time I went to Japan with some friends, and this was years ago. And there's a Japanese philosophy where when you're staying in a room, you leave it better than when you came in. So you take care of the space, and when the person who if you're renting a room or what have you, the owner comes back and says, "Wow, this is better than I even left it to them." And that's the sort of model I have for my life. I mean, that culturally Japanese cultural thing really impacted me in a lot of ways. So in whatever I do, I try to I think about, hey, look, this, my life is only going to be so long, and I just want to leave the most impact I can. So that's sort of a driving force. And, I'm passionate about my kids and helping them grow. And seeing and modeling for them, that you can really enjoy your life and do what you want in life and be passionate and still make money and have a good life. That's a driving force. The charitable part of my life that I mentioned to you is a big driving force. And I see, when I see myself looking back on my life, many years down the road, hopefully, I want to say, hey, look, I was able to impact, X number of people. I was able to, invest in these sustainable types of investments that's helping the world on a different level. Those are the types of things that drive me. Those are the thoughts that really get me going.
I think it's a great reminder that we do need to embrace the fact that, we have mortality. It's not forever, but, not to be, scared or morbid about that thought, but just to say, you know what, how am I acting today? Because ultimately how I am in the present moment is really what makes up our life. And at some point you're going to look back and say, well, what did I do? Something that I'm proud of. And I just think it's a great reminder to really look back and say, here's the amount of people that I've been able to impact. Here's the really important things, because we all get caught up in the day to day. And if we're not careful, then we're not going to really have a life that we're proud of. And so I just think it's a great reminder. So from here, I want to move into our rapid fire section. And what we do is we call this a rare air questionnaire. And the reason why we call it that is because, we're theoretically Elevate Nation. We're climbing Mount Everest. We've reached above the clouds. Most people gave up hours ago, but we didn't. And, we're continuing to push beyond our limits. We're continuing to raise that bar. So I've got a few questions here. First of which, what's the most impactful book that you've ever read?
So there's a lot of them. I think there's several different categories that I mentioned before, but Getting to Yes by Roger Fisher and William Ury is a big one. The One Thing, Gary Keller, that's a huge one. There's so many good books. It's hard for me to name one, but I would really say those two are huge. I think in health, You Are the Placebo, Joe Dispenza, and Food, What Should I Eat, Mark Hyman were big ones for me. And then sort of like kind of like this political type stuff is Confessions of an Economic Hitman and Creature from Jekyll Island. Those are some of the books that I thought about in the top of my head that are phenomenal.
That's
and,
awesome.
And finally, Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss is awesome too.
Oh yeah. That one, actually, that mixed with Getting to Yes, like if you can master the concepts of both of those books, I think you become a world-class negotiator, because it's really two types of negotiating, right? Getting to Yes is the principled, overlapping interest. Obviously it's much more complex than that, but it's a comprehensive read. Totally agree. And then, Never Split the Difference is like the emotion. How do you tap into the emotions of, look, we're emotional beings. So I love that. And I've also read One Thing. I would agree is such an impactful, very simple concept, but it's like, well, what's the one thing I can do that really makes everything else either, unnecessary or irrelevant? It's a concept that's a game changer. So I'll have to check out those others, and we'll put links in the show notes to all these books here. And I love also, this happens so frequently, but I ask what's the most impactful book, and I get like 6 or 7. So I love that.
It's hard to say one. It's hard to give one answer.
Leaders are readers. So what's the biggest way that you elevate your life on a daily basis? I know we talked about morning routine. We talked about, all the different things that you do there and your habits. But I'm curious to know, beyond that, I mean, what's another way, or in a very impactful way, that you elevate your life on a daily basis?
I think I really think it's the primary question of, how can I bring value to people? Because when you give, you really get more than you give. So I think that really adds value and elevates anybody. So that I would say that is the primary question of how can I add value to another person's life, and thinking about that and really acting on that helps bring value to my life.
That's great. That's a That's a great nugget. What is your primary question? If you develop your own core values, you develop your own sort of mission statement and sort of condense that into a overarching primary question, continue to ask yourself that. That's really good. Tell me about how do you elevate others around you?
Well, I think the things that we mentioned, and I also just bringing a positive energy. Because when somebody comes in with a positive energy, they're passionate, they want to grow and contribute. That energy starts permeating to other people, and that's all you can really do. You can try to help someone in certain ways, but you bring in that positive energy makes a huge difference in impact in others as well. So that's one other example I can think of amongst the others that we've already discussed.
Well, and it comes back to the primary question, right? How can I add value to someone else? And
Right.
if you bring that energy to any sort of interaction, you're bringing a positive energy of a giving energy. You're not asking to receive something else from this person, and so it happens naturally in that perspective. So that's really really amazing. So tell me, do you have any parting thoughts, words of wisdom for Elevate Nation based on what we've talked about today?
Yeah, no, I think this was a great podcast, and we spoke about so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share these aspects of my life, and really, what we discussed, I think, really encapsulates sort of the way I think about things on a kind of fundamental level. I really feel that the one thing that I can impart is for really to encourage people to be comfortable with uncertainty and variety in life. That's the one thing I feel like that holds people back from developing their business, from growing, in different directions in life. And if you can really be comfortable with that, that can make that can make your life tremendously different and improved. And in fact, when people ask me, hey, look, how did you do all this? How did you, start this business? How did you sort of, pull back from medicine? Because a lot of docs ask me like all the time, like, hey, look, I'm burnt out. Like, I'll like teach me how I can pull back a little bit. And it really comes down to being, comfortable with uncertainty. I mean, that's really what it is. And if you are comfortable with that, you can make anything happen.
That's an amazing takeaway. And Elevate Nation has got to play this episode again because it is all about uncertainty. It's about developing that comfort level and being uncomfortable. And, I'm taking notes here. So I highly recommend Elevate Nation to be taking notes and acting on this because it's all about taking massive action now. It's okay. We learned, that's great. And I'm all about learning. I think, Ravi, you are too. But at the end of the day, it's about taking massive action. So I want to remind you to do that. If you're listening today, go out and take some steps towards, embracing that uncertainty. And so Ravi, I really appreciate you taking time today. If Elevate Nation wanted to stay in contact with you and follow along with what you are doing as well as your company, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can reach me at via email. That's probably the easiest way. I'm also on LinkedIn, but email is rgupta. It's rgupta at vikingcapllc.com. It's vikingcapllc.com. You can also listen to my podcast as well, Doctors, Real Estate, and Money. And you don't have to be a doctor to listen to it. I just, that's sort of my niche group, but anybody can get information out of that.
I love it. I love it. Well, overall, really, really appreciate you being with us today. And, I want to remind you guys, I mean, we talked about it just a minute ago, but it's about repetition. I mean, if you listen to this one time, you're definitely going to get a lot of wisdom. If you listen to it two times, repetition, you're going to find out some more information that you didn't hear first. So listen to it again, take notes, share this with a friend because, there's so many people, like I said in the beginning of the show, that are just plugging it in. They're tolerating their life. Help somebody else get to a point where, where they can really live to the highest limits. And so, really, at the end of the day, we really, really appreciate you being here, Ravi. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit tylerchesser.com.